Once I built a railroad, made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? I'm Susan Grabel, I'm a sculptor. I've been doing sculpture for about 40 years. And I'm interested in this human dimension of social issues. The work is about what I see around me. It's the kind of thing we walk by and we don't want to see them. This piece is one of the early pieces. I started out doing clay dioramas, and this piece is a city. I wanted to get the feeling of different things happening at the same time. I was pregnant with my daughter and went to visit my grandmother in a nursing home, and that was the piece that I started with. And I worked on this piece for over a year, and it wasn't until I finished it that I realized I had done a cycle of life. There's a pregnant woman, there's a nursing mother, child here, and a young couple in having an argument in a pizza parlor. This piece is called Face of the Enemy. It's about the dehumanization of war and to show the real consequences of war. It's not like a blip on the screen. It's they're real people and there's real devastation. As a woman and a mother, I was really concerned about the destruction of war. It's about the buy mentality of our culture, consumerism, strangled by our possessions, overwhelmed by them. Intensive care. This is actually about my niece of 18 months who died of a very rare form of cancer. And this is a portrait of my sister and my brother-in-law and my niece Lisa, and the connectedness of the parents and the child. When I was doing this piece, my daughter came down to the studio and she said, "Why are you doing this? It's so sad." And I said, "Grandma walks around crying all the time and I make sculpture." But this piece is very cathartic for people. So anybody who's had a child in a hospital, a sick child, instantly recognizes that whole feeling of it. And someone recently was moved by it from her elderly father in the hospital.
I'm Elizabeth Egbert. I'm the president and CEO of the Staten Island Museum, and I'm particularly pleased with this exhibit of Susan Grabel's work. So the work speaks for itself. It's beautifully executed. There's both a level of craft and a level of aesthetic adventure. So it spans that whole range of what is craft, what is art. And Susan has a very long career being an advocate for social causes as well as the role of women in the arts.
In the 1980s, I was commuting to a job in the city, and I saw very acutely the juxtaposition of people living on the streets and elegant store windows. And that's where this piece came from, and I started on the work about homelessness. The idea is to show the juxtaposition, to bring the humanity of homeless people to the fore. They're people, they had families, they had pets, they took piano lessons, not just, not a weird thing. Because we tend to walk by them, we don't want to see it, we don't want to deal with the issues. So we have to look at them and look at them as people. A lot of the work that I do is stuff that I've seen on the street, and then I extrapolate from it. And technically, I felt that the other pieces I had done, Face of the Enemy, that wall was about as big as I wanted to get in one piece in clay. And so when I went to this piece and also City Streets, I started to use wood as the background so that I could get the scale larger without having the unwieldy clay pieces. This is Once I Built a Railroad, and the title comes from the Depression-era song. In the background, I've juxtaposed articles about homelessness and fashion iconography. When I was working on the homeless series, I did a lot of work with Project Hospitality, which is the local organization on Staten Island that services the homeless. And in seeing people's reaction to the homeless and in seeing the Not in My Backyard attitude of people about transitional housing and supervised transitional housing, I started the series of portrait reliefs in boxes. And it's about how the sanctuaries we create for ourselves become our prisons. I made the portraits from newspaper clippings because I want to get a particularity without feeling bound by the whole thing. I find that if you don't do it from anything, you end up making a stylized version of myself all the time. So there's always something about the face that interests me, or the structure of the face, or the expression. I use old wood and found wood in these pieces, and that adds another layer of narrative to it. In the late 1990s, I noticed a lot of changes in my own body, and was concerned about the lack of positive images out there of aging women. We have the crone, which used to be a term of respect, has become a term of denigration. Initially, the first work that I did was a collaboration with Jenny Tango, who's a painter. And Jenny did the painting, and this is my sculpture around. And we worked together for about 4 years. We did quite a number of pieces together, and then I started working on my own. So putting the woman in unusual places and awkward ways, and using repetition of the form, referencing ancient Greek friezes. The purpose is to get us to really see the woman's body and normalize it. This is the Venus cycle, and it's about aging women's bodies. I was acutely aware of the way the media bombards us with images of femaleness that look nothing like what any of us see in the mirror. And so this work is about aging women, but it's about women of all ages. I show the body with all its wrinkles and its bumps and lumps, again to normalize it. Younger women are really drawn to the work also because it tells them that their bodies are okay and it'll be okay later on.
The exhibition really goes through several different bodies of work and traces Susan's evolution as a sculptor. And this piece, which is one of her most monumental, is one of the most recent works. It's done in paper, even though that may be surprising because the volume seems so solid. But when you step around it, you realize that they're just hollow forms. And these were done by making molds from clay sculptures that Susan has made. And I think it's very interesting that what she's starting to do here and in some of the other recent works is multiplying the figures. So they almost start to march out and advance on the viewer. Which is a really different idea than some of the other things that she's done in the past.
A lot of people think it looks like ceramics or stone. So it has a solidity and it has a presence, but it also has a fragility. You can see the edges. The paper gives it that vulnerability as well as strength, which is what women are all about.
It's investigating this whole subject of beauty, specifically about women and women's aging bodies, but it really raises the question of our values in society, that which is associated with the appearance of beauty as opposed to what is really the quality of being human.
These are Collagraph Prints, and they're made from compressed sculptures. I compress the sculptures and then ink it up and put it through an etching press. And some of these are collaged. It has a very organic feeling to it. They look like innards and parts of bodies, and trees and leaves, and it's showing the aging body as part of the natural process, to confront the conventional biases about aging women and to validate women's experience of themselves.
A feature of this exhibition was a new program that I inaugurated called the Affinities Program, and that allows artists who are selected to have solo shows at the museum to come to the museum, look over our collections, and select pieces that speak to them and that relate to their own work. So in this area here we have 3 pieces that Susan selected. One is a work by Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, who was not only the founder of the Whitney Museum, but a great sculptor in her own right. And this is a fairly typical piece of hers that shows the influence of Rodin, who was one of her teachers. And then behind me, there are 2 other Affinities pieces. One by a French printmaker named Gavarni that deals with alcoholism, because that's an issue that sort of relates to the cause for a lot of homelessness that Susan dealt with in her work. And also there's a print by Rembrandt called the Ratcatcher, which deals with the relationship between a person of the absolute abject lowest class who makes a living by catching rats, and a middle-class older man who might be his patron. Another Affinities piece that Susan selected is this print by May Stevens called Big Daddy Paper Doll. And May Stevens was a major early feminist artist, and she made a series of paintings and prints based on this theme of Big Daddy. We moved to look at some other works that are displayed in this case with works by Susan Grabel. One is an Ashanti piece of a woman seated on a stool. Another is a piece by Cecil Bell. And the third is one of our antiquities, a very small torso of Aphrodite Venus, Roman piece from somewhere between the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century AD, carved in marble. And this piece, I think, really shows the connection between what Susan is doing and other representations of the female nude.
You know, everybody loves beautifully made objects. Everyone respects technical expertise. So if you take technical expertise and the social conscience, then an artistic vision is just like a slam dunk home run for Susan.